Glen, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate the invitation.
My pleasure. What does it mean to take less and do more?
Well, like many things in life, I guess there are different levels, but for me, the start of it was for backpacking. Obviously, when you go backpacking, you have to carry everything you need, and that limits what you can do. So, if you carry less weight backpacking, you can do more miles, climb more peaks, get further in a 3-day weekend, something like that. So that's how it started for me. And then over the years, as I kind of worked to lighten my backpacking load, I realized that a lot of those lessons actually had wider applications to life in general.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about your life and what led you to write the wonderful book that is called Take Less, Do More.
Well, I was born in Southern California in the United States and, grew up, I guess, fairly typical life growing up in Southern California, which ended abruptly when my parents divorced when I was in 4th grade. And my mom proceeded to put us kids and cats, dogs, mice into her Dodge van and drive across the country in February to the other coast, Massachusetts. So that was a shock. And then once I finished schools there, when I graduated from high school, I got on a bicycle and rode my bike back across the country, 4,200 miles. Took a lot longer on a bicycle, and ended up, I've been on the West Coast ever since. I worked for a couple of years out of high school as a civil engineer, which ended up being my career. Went to school for that. And then along the way, met an amazing woman and somehow convinced her to marry me, had some kids, almost died in a plane crash, accidentally started a backpacking company, and retired to Bend.
Amazing. So the book that you've written, how did that come about?
So along the way, I started Gossamer Gear. I started sewing my own gear. My mom thought every kid should leave home knowing how to cook, bake, and sew. And so when I realized that the gear I was carrying was too heavy, I started sewing my own. And this was early internet days. I put the plans on the internet for free, and whoever wanted them could make one. But I got some inquiries, and anyway, finally ended up making a few, and that turned into a lot more than a few. And along the way, it's a long story, but along the way, I met John Mackey. So the company grew, and I was doing it on the side. We always worked full time as a civil engineer, and eventually the company got to where it was too big. I couldn't do both. I was working 60, 70 hours a week doing the engineering, and another 30 hours a week on the gear business. And I wasn't taking any money from the gear business and making good money as an engineer. So I figured I had to close the gear company down. But along the way, I had met John Mackey, the co-founder of Whole Foods Market. And when I told him I was going to close the business down, he invested in it and hired someone to run it. And so even though I'm still actively involved today, I'm not involved in the day-to-day stuff. And so the gear company was able to continue. And John Mackey has a practice. He's a huge outdoors guy besides, building and running businesses.
Hello, it's Brad Hook here, and I'm delighted to share my new book, Start with Values. It is a guide to help you discover what matters most and then bring those core values to life through tools such as micro habits. It helps you make clearer decisions through the decision-making guide. It helps you to activate your values in conversations, particularly those courageous conversations where you need to assert yourself. And it helps you explore some potential shared values, such as nature stewardship, to help us all look after this planet that we call home. Inside, you'll find thought experiments, you'll find worksheets, you'll find action plans, and lots more. If you are interested in reducing your stress and building a life that's meaningful and purposeful, get your copy now. They're available on Amazon, both as a paperback book, such as this, and in Kindle format. So if you have some feedback, please log it in the reviews. I'd love to hear your experience of bringing your values to life. This approach has helped hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and it's now ready for you. Get your copy.
And so he likes to invite people that are good company to go on trips with him. I mean, that's how he pays for everything. I mean, it's how he likes to spend his money, by showing people a good time in the wilderness. And so I've been on a number of trips with him over the years. And probably about 10 years ago, he would be walking along talking gear, because he's a big gear guy. And he would say, "Hey, Glenn, you need to write a book." And I would say, "Well, I think there are plenty of good books on ultralight backpacking already, and I don't really see that I need to add my 2 cents to it." But every year he would, ask, "Hey, how's that book going?" And then he got his friends asking, I'd be hiking alongside one of his friends, and they go, "Hey, I hear you're writing a book." It's like, oh my gosh. So John's original offer was, "You write the book, I'll write a foreword." And I finally thought, it's probably not too many people that John Mackey, have the offer of John Mackey writing the foreword to their book. And I probably ought to get serious about that and take advantage of that. So a couple other things happened where I started to see the way forward to write a book. So I did.
There you go. And now it is available. The links are in the show notes, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So what is ultralight backpacking? Of course, many of us understand the concept of taking a backpack, going somewhere. What is ultralight backpacking, and what were some of the challenges when you first transitioned to this form of travel?
Well, there are various definitions. In talking about ultralight backpacking, it's useful probably to first define base pack weight, which for people who aren't backpackers refers to all your gear and clothing that you're not currently wearing.
Okay.
But not counting food and water, because food and water can vary on the length of the trip, whether you're in the desert or you're constantly by water. So that varies. So if you take just your gear, your clothing that you're not usually wearing, and no food and water, that's considered base pack weight. And so most people consider less than 10 pounds of base pack weight kind of lightweight, and less than maybe probably seven pounds or so getting into ultralight range. And my base pack weight, so, my pack, extra insulation, clothing, cooking gear, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, tent, all that, first aid, weighs typically under 5 pounds when I'm going out for a trip.
That's incredible. How is that possible? Is it just the materials used and the ingenuity of design?
There's a number of steps. Yeah, some of the general concepts, you're looking for things that do dual use. So, you can use a bandana as for shade. You can use a washcloth. You can use the rest of it for a towel. You can use it to pre-filter water. Things like a spork. It's a spoon and a fork. You don't need 2 separate utensils. Trekking poles can be used to help you walk during the day, and then can be used as tent poles at night. So, anytime you have something that does dual use, you can leave one thing behind. And then part of it is materials, finding the lightest thing you can. Part of it is quantities. Early in the Boy Scout days, we'd have kids show up with, 8 ounces of sunscreen for a, weekend hike. It's like, well, you're not going to use that much, so take smaller quantities.
Hey, Brad here. Would you believe that around 70% of the people who watch this podcast have not yet subscribed? It would mean the world to us if you click that subscribe button on whichever platform you use, so that we can stay connected with you and you'll receive notifications when we add new episodes. We really appreciate you coming and connecting with us and being part of our community. So All the best.
And then part of it is skills. If you have the ability to set up a tarp, then you don't necessarily need a tent. So yeah, there's some general concepts, but generally, I say I'm an average guy with maybe above average PR. But the one thing that I claim is I've probably spent more time than most people on the planet thinking about how to make my pack lighter.
I'm sure you have. It's fascinating to think that you can optimize this, because so many people never think beyond a suitcase with wheels when they go somewhere. But I have trekked, for example, through the Himalayas with just a little backpack on my back. And it is amazing when you prepare properly, what you can actually do. Now, would you be carrying food along with you? And what kind of lengths are we talking about when you go off on an excursion?
So yes, obviously I'm carrying food, I'm carrying water. The food generally for me is between 1.2 and 1.4 pounds a day. I find is what I need for most trips. That can vary depending on the trip, but that's the general range. And water, I've done trips where I haven't carried any water. I've just, every time we come to a water source, you drink a liter and go on. And then I've gone on trips where you needed to carry a day and a half worth of water between water sources. So that weight just varies. Typically if I'm going out to the mountains for a 3-day trip, I'm leaving the trailhead. My pack weighs about 12 pounds all in.
Okay.
13 pounds with food and water.
Now, what are some memorable trail experiences, and perhaps some that may have taught you the lessons in generosity, gratitude, and curiosity that you mentioned in your book?
Well, I think the lesson in generosity, probably the longest trip I've done is still the one I did at age 17, riding 4,200 miles across the country.
So far.
And, I'm glad I did it before I got married, had kids, and had a job. That was kind of the time in life to do that. But we were, our typical practice, we were riding along the old kind of state highways that had been replaced by the interstates, the big freeways. And so there were still like these rest stops that no one really used anymore. So we would often camp there. But if we were in a town, kind of the outskirts of town in the middle of the country, we would often go knock on a front door and say, hey, we're 4 scruffy kids riding our way from Massachusetts to California. Can we pitch our tents in your front yard? And I was actually sleeping in a hammock that summer. So I was always looking for 2 trees that were the right distance apart. And there was one time in Indiana where we stopped, or Illinois, we stopped and went up and knocked on the door, and it was an older gentleman answered the door, and he said, oh yeah, sure. You'd be more comfortable around the side. It's more shelter from the wind. And so we set up there, and he kind of ambles out to chat to us. And he asked what time we get going in the morning. And so I told him, we're usually leaving at first light or 7 o'clock, whatever I told him. And he looked disappointed, and I, asked why he had asked. And he said, well, my wife and I would love to get up and make you a proper breakfast. But he said she has really bad arthritis, and it's super painful early in the morning. And so, we won't be able to do that. And I said, well, that's okay. We're happy to have a great place to sleep. We don't expect breakfast out of the deal. But he did come bring us like a thing of little donuts, so we'd had something in the morning. And then the next morning, sun comes up, we're packing up our bags and packing up our bikes. And he opens the door and kind of beckons us over. And so we walked over, and his wife had gotten up early, pushed through the pain, and put out a spread that we couldn't believe. I mean, there were eggs and bacon and sausage and biscuits and gravy. And I mean, it was just huge, staggering amounts of food, which we proceeded to polish off, 4 17-year-olds riding 80 miles a day. I'm sure we ate like their week's groceries in one sitting.
Yeah.
And, it just left an impression on me. I've been telling that story for 50 years now almost. And, I like to think that they told it from their side of it, as long as they lived, about, the 4 hungry kids that showed up on their doorstep. And it, made a difference and made a difference in our lives. And I like to think made a little difference in theirs too.
I love that. And that's what I found through travel, is that it really teaches you that most people, not all, but most people would love nothing more than to invite you in for a conversation and maybe a meal. And I've had that so many times, sitting on the floor with a family in Bangladesh and sharing what little they have, and so proud of it as well, and so happy to have you there. It's incredible. And it does teach you the value of generosity, and it makes you want to do the same for others. What about the gratitude and the curiosity? I suppose gratitude comes naturally when you've experienced that kind of generosity.
Yeah. Gratitude, I guess it's gratitude gets into kind of the way you look at things, your frame, your mindset, and the stories you tell yourself. I have a hiking buddy, Reed Miller, who he told me once, says, Glenn, I always like hiking with you because you never complain. You're always looking on the bright side. If it's cloudy, you're saying, well, at least it's not raining. If it starts raining, you say, well, at least it's not snowing, and if it starts snowing, you say, well, it could be worse, it could be hailing. He says, you're always looking on like the bright side and finding the good things rather than focusing on the bad things. And I think, being outside, you're putting yourself in an environment that you can't completely control, which I think is good for us as humans to, naturally you want to plan and try and anticipate, but ultimately, you don't control. It's a wild place. And so you will need to adapt and use your skills and decision making and the gear that you brought to deal with whatever comes up. But yeah, being able to look kind of on the bright side of things, I guess it could always be worse. And you can always think of someone that has it worse. And I think, traveling does that. The next time you're feeling poor or whatever, you think about that family in Bangladesh who gave you like their last 3 fishes. It's like, yeah, maybe life's pretty good. It resets your perspective on how much we have and really how little we need.
And the curiosity aspect?
Curiosity. One thing about ultralight backpacking is, if you're trudging along with 60 pounds on your back, you're not noticing what's going on. You're just looking at the trail and thinking about how heavy that is and when can you stop and take this back off. And if you're out there with 10 pounds on your back, you're not thinking about it. We often, when I'm out with other ultralighters, like we stop for a break, and it's fairly common that people won't take their packs off because it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're that light. So you have time to notice animals and to wonder about, gosh, I wonder what those tracks are. What's that sound? And yeah, just to be curious about things. Also, the other nice thing about long periods spent walking with people is you get a chance to have conversations that don't normally happen in life. We're all busy and, we might be curious about what's going on for someone, but it's like, oh, let's get together for coffee. And then after an hour, it's like, okay, I got to go, and we each go on to appointments. Whereas, if I've done some walking trips in Europe where you're just walking all day. And so, I'll walk alongside someone and ask them about something. I say, oh, it's a long story. We've got all day, you can tell as long a story as you want. And it's so rare to have that amount of solid time to talk to people and be curious, to get beneath the surface on what they do and whatever, and what they've struggled with and what they've dealt with and what their dreams are and what their hopes are.
and no mobile phone reception in most of these places.
Exactly. Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
No distractions. Yes. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Michael Easter's book, The Comfort Crisis. I don't know if you've heard of it. I actually give away so many of these that on Amazon, if you look at my book, it says frequently bought together. But the general premise of the book is we've done too good a job as humans of making life comfortable. And it's not good for us. We need to get outside and get away from the distraction. Lower your anxiety levels and have time to think without being interrupted. That's another great thing about walking all day with no cell phone reception. You've got time to think about things, think about who you are and how you do relationships, or, in my case, interesting gear that I want to build, or things like that. So either, the times you spend hiking by yourself or with other people, that time, Easter talks about it in the book, to let your mind kind of have a soft focus. He's got a general principle, the 20-25-3 rule or something. Anyway, it's kind of like a food pyramid, but an outside pyramid. And he says you should, spend 20 minutes a day outside, or 20 minutes outside with no distractions, no cell phones. You're not listening to anything. You're just outside walking, being in nature. It could be around city block or whatever, 3 times a week. And then once a month, you should spend 5 hours in a little more wild setting. Maybe it's a park, or you're going on a hike, you're doing a half-day hike, something like that. A little more outside, again, distraction free. And then once a year, get out for 3 days or more. And there's something about the 3-day rule. When you're out backpacking or walking for 3 days, you stop thinking about all the things on your to-do list because you have no cell phone reception. There's nothing you can do about any of the things that we think about all the time, that, oh yeah, I should do that. Oh, I should write them. I should call them. You can't do any of it. And so it allows your mind to enter that soft focus where you can just let it wander, and, things pop up like solutions to problems or gear ideas, or like, yeah, I wanted to say that to someone and I never did. I'm going to do that. So,
not to mention the physical benefits of actually walking, oxygenating your body properly, using your muscles as they evolve to be used. I mean, there are just so many benefits to being out and in nature. And I hear about people finding peace or spending time going, for example, to a 10-day Vipassana yoga retreat. For some people, maybe that sounds appealing. I would much rather be on a 10-day hike because you're moving, you're in nature, and I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be with you on that. Well, I don't bend very well, so, yoga is, I probably should do some yoga. But yeah, you get to choose I'm an introvert, so, you can choose to hike alone, or you can choose to hike with people, talk with people. Depending on the trip, obviously, but you can set it up, how you want. And even on trips with other people, you have plenty of time by yourself and plenty of time with other people, because there's plenty of time. All you're doing is walking all day. Yeah.
I love it. Now, importantly, how can we apply some of the lessons and this whole take less, do more mindset to our everyday life?
Well, generosity on the trail, when you're on the trail with not very much gear, it's often important to help other people. I was on a trip once with my buddy Reed and realized, I think day 2, we're on the Pacific Crest Trail. Day 2, suddenly I'm looking at my food bag and there's not as much food in there as there should be. And I realized, I don't know, I'd forgot to carry the 2 when I was doing my math or something, and I had not enough food. And so Reed and I sat down and we split up, we put all our food together and then basically split it in half. Figured we each be a little hungry, but we'd get through the trip. And so in life, we all have something that we can give, and it doesn't usually take a lot to make a difference in another person's lives. And sometimes we'll find that out. Sometimes we won't. One of the things that people are saying they have gotten out of the book is our practice of setting up a separate bank account for being intentional in our generosity. And generosity isn't just about money. I mean, there's many ways to be generous, but oftentimes money's is a good way to be generous. It gives you lots of opportunities. And I think most people, or I'm finding a lot of people, want to be generous and they want to be more intentional in being generous. But, you find out your neighbor's car broke down and they don't have the money to fix it. And you'd like to help, but you just found out your kids need braces. So it's like, things are a little tight this month. It's like, I got my own problems, can't help out. So what we have done for many, many years now is a set portion of all our income goes in a separate checking account. And you can call it your tithing account, gratitude account, whatever you want, but it's a separate account that money is then out of your budget. It's specifically set aside for needs that come across your path. So when I become aware of a need, we can write a check. Our rule, we started small. We started with like 5% of our after-tax income, and now it's a significant portion of our before-tax income. As the income grew, we increased the percentage. And so, we can, Francie had someone at work, a nurse at work, whose son had made some bad decisions and ended up in prison, and he had died there. And she didn't have money to give him a funeral, proper burial. So we can write a $600 check, and it makes no difference in our life because that money's already set aside. So that's something that, a generosity hack, I guess, that people have really found useful.
And gratitude in everyday life, it doesn't happen by accident. And when I've run my resilience workshops, which I've delivered around the world, I often say you need to deliberately create space for practices like gratitude, because otherwise, left to default mode, we're just going to be on the hamster wheel of busyness and life slips away. So whether it's, as you said, a formal practice of sitting down and writing down 3 blessings or acknowledging what went well with your family or your team, powerful tool to use with teams, because often teams just dive straight into the work in progress list, not much thought about what actually has gone well. There we have a natural negativity bias. What are your thoughts for integrating gratitude into everyday life?
Oh, I like what you said about teams. When I was working at the city of Carlsbad as community development director, we used to have meetings, and we'd start with, because like you say, it usually goes like, okay, what are the problems we need to fix? Okay, first, let's go around the table. What went right this last week?
Yes,
what was a customer that was helped? What was someone that went above and beyond to solve a problem or issue a permit or do something or, notice this? And because otherwise you forget. And it's important to recognize those. I'm going to forget the author, but, David Epstein wrote happiness it was, I think, a blog post. Happiness is a 2x2 matrix. And on one axis, he has what we want and what we don't want. And on the other axis, what we have and we don't have. And so, so much of social media is bombarding us every second with what I want but don't have. And of course, if we're intentional about it, we think about the things that we want that we have. But he says we're missing out on an important component an opportunity for gratitude, and that is thinking about things that we don't have, that we don't want. And that was important to me. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, okay, maybe I've got some aches and pains, but yeah, my friend just found out they have cancer and they've got a year to live. I don't have that. So I'm thankful that I don't have that. So yeah, don't forget to be thankful for things you don't have that you don't want.
Tell us about the evolution of Gossamer Gear, because it's a well-known brand. I know the brand. I'm not sure I've used Gossamer Gear, but I haven't done ultralight backpacking either. Well, I did my own version of it, which was extremely rudimentary and probably quite dangerous. But tell us about evolving a brand, because so many people dream of being a founder and having a startup. It's not always easy. What did you learn from creating and launching the brand?
Well, I'm not sure I'm a great example. I never took a paycheck from Gossamer Gear. But I think sometimes, and I've told this to our kids, sometimes allowing the side thing to remain a side thing can preserve the joy in it. Because I didn't really care if people bought packs or not, because I was going to eat and make the mortgage payments and save for college anyway, because I was counting on the engineering money for that. And so I could do what I wanted. And actually, our early products traced my evolution in ultralight backpacking, the G4, and then my load got lighter. So I created the G5, and then we offered the G5, and then briefly we had the G6. And so it was all, I made what I wanted and then offered it for sale. And if other people wanted what I wanted, then they bought it. And if they didn't, they bought something else, I guess, or made it themselves. And I didn't care, because it didn't make any difference to me. And so, yeah, sometimes keeping the side thing can be, I think, a good thing. Keeps the joy in it when you're not counting on it. And it obviously has some limits. I mean, I was working 30 hours a week on my side thing. And when that wasn't enough, okay, that's the limits. And I was going to close it down if it hadn't been for that chance meeting with John Mackey, who says, no, this is good, innovative gear. The company needs to survive. I'm going to step in. And so I don't know if that's duplicatable or not. But I don't know. I mean, I've stepped into companies before that I thought needed to survive. So, yeah, could happen. If you just talk to people and you're making contacts and trying to help others. So, yeah, I mean, it started when Mackie got involved. I mean, he hired someone, he put some money into it. And the company involved, now that, we have people that, it's a small team, but, they need health insurance and a 401k and things like that. So, and they need paychecks. So, we've expanded the offerings, and now we make more, I'd say it's on the lightweight side, definitely. But more mainstream. It looks more like what people are used to. It's not like something that I put together in my garage. And I'm still working on products. We did a 1,000-mile bike packing trip a couple summers ago, and I knew it was going to be buggy, so I wanted a tent instead of my usual tarp. But I wanted a lighter tent than what we had, so I designed a new tent. And anytime I come up with a product, the Gossamer team takes a look at it and goes, okay, the first question is, are there 5 other people besides Glenn who think this is a good idea?
Yeah.
And oftentimes the answer is, yeah, probably not. But yeah, our new tent was like, well, maybe we'll make 100 of them and see how it goes. And we just had to make our second 100. So,
wow. So hold on a second. So now I knew that you create this, but it seems so foreign to me to actually get the materials and then create something like a tent or a backpack. So what's the process? Do you purchase material? Do you experiment with different types of materials? You have sewing machines? How does this actually work?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, I do that with everything in life. And I have friends who weld, and to them, that's like sewing is to me. It's like, yeah, I need to connect this thing to this. So I'm just going to get out the welder and just, to me, that's like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I just grew up sewing. So, if I see something, like we travel a lot in our adventure van, and we have a stacking thing of pots that works on the induction cooktop.
Mm-hmm.
And, they made some goofy, like, rubber thing with a hard plastic ball that's supposed to go in between. I mean, thing would wrap your knuckles and spin off, and then it would slide on the top of the above the cab area. So I thought, well, I can do better than this. So I got some nonstick fabric and sewed it so the pot fits like exactly in it. And then I've got Velcro straps that go over the top through the handles with a little bit of elastic so it stretches, so you get good tension. It's like perfect solution. I mean, it's like, and I just sewed it up. So yeah, when you can sew, it's like you can fix anything. I had a buddy who had a brilliant idea of he does a lot of business travel. He says, yeah, at the airport, you always got to get some work done. You need a place to put your computer, and you're trying to balance on your lap with your coffee and your phone and everything. He says, it's crazy. So he came up with this idea for having a table on your the handle of your roller bag. It'd be about the right height. You could sit down, have something to work on. So he's describing it to me, and I go, well, let's sew one up. And it's like, you could do that? It's like, yeah, we just get some material and start sewing. And, the first one's ugly and the second one's a little less ugly. And yeah.
And you learned the skill of sewing from your mom?
Yeah. Yeah. My mom thought every kid she just considered that a basic life skill, sewing.
Yeah. Very interesting. I love that idea of being able to visualize something and then just experiment until you find a design. And it may be a product where, the use case is one person just for you. And it sparks many, many thoughts, because we've got a van, one of the VW Californias, which I love. And we go on some adventure travel within New Zealand. And there are many little things that I go, if only there was a product that did this. But you are inspiring me to, because my wife is really good at sewing, to just say, let's get some material and give it a try.
Yeah. Just start sewing stuff. We started getting like the atlases, kind of the big atlases. I mean, here we got to get them for like every state that we travel. So we've got kind of a stack now, and they're hard to keep track of. They're sliding around. So on my list, I haven't got it. We've been traveling too much. I'm going to sew like a big envelope that they'll all fit in. There's going to be like a little pen pocket on the side, and the one side's going to be non-skid, so they won't slide around when we put them someplace. Yeah. Francie wants a thing to go over the sink because it has a glass cover that comes down, and she keeps fruit and stuff in there. Sometimes it gets hot. So, I got to do a little sandwich that has like some insulation in there, some non-skid on the bottom so it doesn't slide around, something that'll just fit on the sink. That's another thing on the list. I mean, that's the problem when you can sew, is like your project list just got bigger.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, I love it. It's very inspiring, especially being a lifelong surfer. There are many, many little things that I've always thought would be useful. Like, you get surfboard bags, but for surfboard accessories and so forth. I'm learning a lot from this. The fact that you just do it is, where do you think you get that innate curiosity to just create things? Have you always been that way?
I don't know. I think part of it is you're not afraid of it. Like our kids, they're not afraid of computers, and especially like young kids these days. It's like they're not afraid of breaking anything. They just start punching keys and see what happens, and they'll write programs or whatever. They don't have that fear. And it's like, I'll just start sewing. And it's like, oops, I've ripped out plenty of seams in my life. That's a skill you learn too. But yeah, see, I can already see your brain turning. It's like, yeah, just, if you can sketch like, well, this surf bag is okay, but if I were going to make it, it'd be better like this. Just be careful. You may end up with a couple side businesses because other people see your surf bag and go, that's genius. Why don't they make them like that? I don't know, because they're not designed by people who actually surf, or who knows,
Well, I do run a surf magazine, which I've had for 2 decades. And I've always wondered, what is the point of this? Because It's a passion project. It takes quite a lot of time, doesn't make that much revenue. And recently we thought, should we either just sell it because people want it, or should we create a product because it's the perfect launch pad for a product? I mean, we've got the traffic, we've got people, a niche audience, very engaged. I think there's scope for a product, especially considering that my wife, who is Russian, she grew up and was taught to sew as one of those fundamental skills that everyone should know.
Basic life skill. Yeah. Well, and you can, you've with the magazine, you've got, if you need someone to test something, you just put out a call and you get as many product testers as you want.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. What is next for you? So you've written this book. How is the book launch going so far? How has it been received? I've seen some amazing feedback so far. What's your perspective?
Getting good reviews, won some awards. I feel like I'm back in second grade. I just got some little gold stickers I can stick on the covers of books I have lying around. Yeah, I've never written a book before, so, obviously it's not like a bestseller, but it's selling along, and I'm donating all the proceeds anyway, so it's not like, whether it sells more or less doesn't make a difference to my lifestyle at this point. It's been a good experience, I think, doing something I didn't know how to do and was uncomfortable doing, and learned some new skills. And I'm meeting some fun people, through the process. Like one of the gals at the publisher is like a close friend, and she's going to come visit with her sister, visit Ben, and we'll go do some fun stuff. And I've been backpacking with people that I've met, through the book. And we're talking about coming to New Zealand, so you could be on the list.
Please. Anytime. I'd love to help you with your itinerary and show you around where we live. It would be an absolute pleasure.
We could kick around some sewing projects, some design things.
Now I'm excited. You sound like the right person to be with if you are about to embark on some kind of trail hike or excursion. It sounds like you have almost the. Do you carry a sewing kit with you?
I have repair.
Okay.
Yes, in that base pack weight, I'll have some tenacious tape for fixing things, because often my stuff is made of pretty light fabrics. I'll have some duct tape, of course. Don't leave home without it. I will have some needle and thread, and I have had to sew things up on the trail before it happens.
What's your favorite place to be if you could choose one place?
I mean, I'm mostly happy to be outside. If I'm picking, it's probably in the mountains above tree line.
Yeah.
I just took a bunch of people from Maine up into the Sierra Nevada mountains in California, and just the soaring granite and the lakes and streams. I mean, they were just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Yeah. There's nothing quite like it.
Would you ever want to do that exclusively? Just take people on guided tours?
I don't like taking people on guided tours, and I specifically mentioned this, like, I'm not your guide, I'm your facilitator. I have a list of people that's, I don't know, currently about 65, that usually a couple times a year I'll get permits for somewhere and send out a blind copy, hey, I got 8 slots, whoever wants to come. But these are people who are already experienced, they're reasonably fit. They're good company on the trail, no drama, no whiners, no complainers. And they've got their kit reasonably light. So these are kind of pre-selected. I have a friend who's very patient with people. He loves to teach. He's got that teacher's heart. It's like, I don't have that. I don't have the patience. So yeah. I'll answer questions. I know about the trail. I can give advice on gear if you want it. If you want to go lighter, if you want to go heavier, I can't help you there. So yeah, I can be your, consultant, but I'm not responsible for you. You're going to make your own decisions. You're going to be responsible for yourself. I expect you. I'm not going to not cooking your dinner for you. You got to figure all that out.
Or singing you to sleep, or whatever else it is that you might need.
Exactly. You're on your own.
What's next for you? Any exciting plans?
We just got back from a week in our adventure van. going to the redwoods and stuff because my brother was out from Maine and they wanted to see some stuff. We're back for, I think, 3-4 days, and then we're leaving for probably a month or so, driving across 3 or 4 western states, get to Texas, see my dad. And the Gossamer Gear is based in Austin now, so we'll have some meetings, check in with the team there.
Okay.
And then home for Thanksgiving, Christmas. Then I'm headed to the Himalayas, look for snow leopards. And then that's really the only thing. 2025, there's some kicking around of ideas. 2026, I'm in touch with the 3 other guys that we rode our bicycles across the country in 1976. And we're talking about a 50-year complete the loop trip, the 4 of us riding our bikes back across the country.
Love that. Have they stayed fit and well?
I only know from a couple Zoom calls, and I would say it's true for 2 of us and maybe not so much for the other 2. There's been talk of e-bikes.
Yeah, I was about
there's
to
definitely
say.
been talks of, hey, I ain't camping. This is going to be a hotel trip.
Yeah.
So I'm more comfortable on the ground. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll be in the parking lot or something.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, Glen, thanks so much. How can people find out more? Where would you like them to go?
Probably the best place to go is glenvanpeski.com, my website. I've got, there's videos on there. There's tips and tricks. They can learn more about the book. Or they can just, they're welcome to email me either through the website or just directly to Glen at glenvanpeski.com.
Any final thoughts for those who stuck with us all the way to the end?
Pay attention to the stories you tell yourself. See if you can, when you find yourself telling yourself a bad story about how bad things are, just think for a minute and try and reframe it. I was going somewhere with my wife the other day. We're driving somewhere locally and there's traffic and I don't sit well. So I'm looking for an alternate route. So I take a left to a parallel road, which was blocked off. That's why our first road that we were on was backed up. And now I lost my place. I'm even further behind. And so naturally, this is not good for my attitude. And I'm getting frustrated. And then I go, wait, time out. Like, you're retired. You have no schedule. You're sitting in a car with plenty of gas, with a beautiful woman in the seat next to you. It's like, chill, enjoy the ride. So you can use it on like the day-to-day things too.
Love that. What a way to finish. Everyone, please do check out the links in the show notes. Get yourself a copy of Glen's book. Highly recommended. Glen, enjoy the book launch process and all of the adventures ahead. Conversations like this are why I enjoy podcasting. So thank you.
You bet. My pleasure.
Everyone, we'll see you in the next episode.